In this lesson, we will learn how to cycle an animation infinitely in Maya. Let's go ahead and get started by creating an idle for our UFO, and then we'll go in and learn how to cycle the animation and make sure that it will cycle seamlessly. Very important. So we'll go ahead and take a look at how this is done. What I'll do is go ahead and first choose a range for our idle. Let's go ahead and choose 1 and 33 because that's going to give us a really nice midpoint of 17. And then we'll also have midpoints in between that midpoint. So we'll go ahead and take a look at that. Let's go ahead and set our N to 33. Again, here's our mid, 17. Now those extra midpoints would be 9 and 25, simply because from 17, if we were to count our frames before that time or after that time, and when we get to 9 and 25, we'd notice that we'd have the same frame count. All right, so again, this gives us a really nice midpoint so that we can create a seamless transition as we exit the last key and as we get into the first key and as it continues to loop. All right, so it's now time to go ahead and grab our control. Very important with cycles, we want to make sure our first and last frames are identical, again, so we can achieve a nice seamless blend. So in frame 1, I'll go ahead and start with the translate y-axis. I'll go ahead and right-click and choose key selected. Now we'll go to frame 33. Let's go ahead and click there. We'll go ahead and right-click and choose key selected to go ahead and save that value of 0. It's now time to change the pose. I have auto key on so we can save a bit of time here. Let's go to frame 17 and we'll translate our craft down just a bit. So watch this. When we hit play, take a look. We have some movement now. Really cool. And it looks nice and fluid. There's no hops or anything like that, and we'll take a look at why that is when we start to cycle our function curve. Now, let's say we go ahead and put this to the test. Let's go ahead and add a few poses in between our range here. So we'll go ahead and add poses on 9 and 25, where we rotate our UFO just to make it look a little bit more realistic. Now before that, remember, we need to make sure our first and last keys are identical. So let's go ahead and go to frame 1. We'll right-click on our rotate Z and create a key. We'll do the same thing on frame 33. Right-click and choose key selected. Now we can go to frame 9, highlight the rotate Z channel, and middle-click and drag just to add a slight change to its orientation. With auto key, that key should automatically be set. Great. Now for the mirrored frame, which is 25, what we'd want to do is use the reciprocal here. Let's middle click on 25, and now we can go ahead and take this value and put the negative operator in front of it to flip our ship in the opposite direction. So watch this. When we play through, in between the animation, that looks great, but as we exit our last key, and as we come into our first key, you can see there's a bit of a nasty pause that we'll want to clean up. So we can clean this up by cycling the animation. Let's go ahead and take a look. We'll head over to our perspective and graph view. I'll press the A key so we can take a look at our function curves. Now, before we cycle the animation, we want to head over to View, Infinity. And this is going to show us how the animation continues after our last key and before our first key. Now, with our control selected or the channel selected that we'd like to cycle, we can go ahead and go to the Curves menu. So again, if you want to cycle all function curves, which chances are you do, you'd want to grab your control from the graph editor outliner here. If you only want to cycle a specific channel or a set of channels, you'd want to select them right here in your outliner, right here in the graph editor. You'd simply go ahead and control click the ones that you would like to cycle. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and grab the control. It's now time to head over to our curves menu. I'm going to tear this off so we can take a look. So we have pre and post cycle. Pre is going to allow us to cycle before our first key, and of course post will cycle after our last key. So you can see the first option is cycle, which is going to cause the animation to cycle forward and back, keeping this same function curve here. And here's the danger of changing our first or last key. Watch this. I'll go ahead and set the animation to, let's say, frame 200. So watch, if I were to go ahead and take this last key or this last set of keys and start adjusting the keyframe, maybe bringing it up just a little bit more, you can see we get this break in the animation. Now watch this. When we play this through, it's going to look like a really nasty snap. Take a look at that. That's why we want to make sure our first and last keys are identical. So if I were to go ahead and undo this back, the worst thing we'll get is a pause still in our rotate Z. All right, so we just want to now clean up that pause, and we'll take a look at that, but I'd like to also point out the other options. We have cycle with offset. Now, if we were to go ahead and apply this, so I'll go ahead and set that with pre-infinity and with post-infinity. Take a look at what happens when we grab this last key and start to modify it. You can see it's going to remember that value, and it's going to have it continue in a relative way. It's going to continue to add on top of that value. This is great to use when we want to translate our walk or run forward, because it's going to continue forward. All right, sweet. And again, you can learn about this in our walk and run courses. But in our case, we don't want to use that. We, of course, want to work with cycle, but we also have oscillate, which will create a ping-pong effect. So now if we were to play the animation, you'll see that when we get to our last key, it's actually going to reverse the animation and go back, and then once we get to that first key, it reverses it yet again. And then we have linear, which is going to have it continue based off of the orientation of your tangency. So that's essentially what linear does. And then we have constant to turn off the cycle. So if we wanted to turn it off, we'd simply go ahead and set both to constant. So let's go ahead and choose cycle. And now it's time to finish up by cleaning up our rotate Z. Here's how this is done. Very important. We'll go ahead and grab the rotate Z and press the F key. Take a look. Now we can clearly see our break. So to fix this, we'd grab both keys. And now we can hold down Shift and grab our out tangents and simply middle click and drag up so that our tangents blend into our function curves. Now watch this. If we were to go ahead and set this time to, let's say, 300 or 500, you're going to notice that no matter what, we're going to get this really nice looking blend. No longer do we have a pause. Sweet. So that's a look at how to cycle animation seamlessly in Maya.